The Galactic Council chamber glittered like a sea of stars. Thousands of alien delegates floated in zero-gravity seats, their scales, feathers, and metallic exoskeletons shining in the artificial light. Their voices blended into an ocean of laughter, sarcasm, and scorn. At the center of it all, the holodisplay hovered, an image of Earth's fleet. It was a sad sight by galactic standards. 20 ships, dull gray, scarred with rust, their hulls pitted from centuries-old battles. No sleek designs, no glowing energy cores. They looked ancient, fragile, weak. The laughter grew louder. Is this a joke? Hissed the Zarketh Dominator, his crimson crest flaring. These relics wouldn't survive a meteor storm. A drivel. Warlord thumped his ironclad tail on the floor, shaking the chamber. They send garbage into the stars and call it a fleet.
Pathetic.
Even the Varelian diplomats, known for their icy manners, allowed themselves a mocking smile. Humans, sneered High Chancellor Vrees of the Dominion, his voice echoing across the chamber, are a race of scavengers. They collect junk, weld it together, and call it strength. How amusing. The delegates roared with laughter. The sound rippled through the chamber like a wave of cruelty, and then the Chancellor raised a clawed hand. The laughter died. Very well, he said, his tone sharp with arrogance. If Earth wishes to keep its so-called independence, let them prove it. We will send 32 cruisers, modern state-of-the-art. Let the galaxy watch as these rust buckets burn. Council erupted with cheers. Livestream would be arranged. Billions across the stars would watch humanity humbled, crushed by superior power, and at the far end of the chamber, in a small shadowed alcove, Admiral Elias Hayes of Earth Forces listened in silence. He didn't argue, didn't protest. He just smiled, a small, cold smile that no one noticed. Hours later, the galaxy buzzed with excitement. Networks screamed headlines: Earth to face the Dominion, the antique fleet's last stand. Watch live the humans' final hour. On alien entertainment streams, comedians mocked the junk fleet, making jokes about their engines powered by coal and steam. Animated memes of human ships crumbling to dust filled the halls. The galaxy was ready for a show, in orbit above. Earth, the 20 ships of the Terran Defense Fleet floated like ghosts against the black. Their hulls were scarred, their armor peeling. Even their names were relics: Leviathan, Warspite, Titan, Goliath. They looked like ships from another age, because they were. But inside, behind those rusted skins, something slept. On the flagship, Leviathan, Admiral Hayes, stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. His uniform was old-fashioned black, with silver trim, polished boots. His gray eyes were sharp as knives. Status? He asked calmly. Engines primed. Weapons offline for now. Crew ready. And the protocol? The officer hesitated, then nodded. Nemesis protocol is live, sir. Hayes' expression didn't change. He turned toward the viewport, staring into the endless dark. They think we're weak, he murmured. Let them. Far across the void, the alien fleet arrived. 32 cruisers, sleek as blades, glowing with energy shields. They slid through space like hunting predators, their hulls shimmering with power fields. Each ship alone could level a planet. At the heart of the fleet, the Dominion flagship, the pride of Zarkoth burned, crimson with the sigils of war. On its command deck, Admiral Korvath bared his fangs in a cruel smile. Open a channel, he ordered. The hala flared to life on the Leviathan's bridge. Korvath's monstrous face appeared, scales gleaming under the light of alien suns. Human, he snarled, voice dripping venom. I offer you one chance to surrender. Power down your antiques. Kneel before the Dominion. Beg for mercy. Ah! Didn't move. His voice was soft, calm, like a whisper before a storm. We don't kneel. Korvath's laughter shook the channel. Then you die. The feed cut. Across the galaxy, billions tuned in. Holoscreens lit up in bars, homes, starliners. Families gathered to watch the slaughter. Commentators grinned. "This will be quick," one analyst said. "Earth's ships are obsolete. They won't last 60 seconds. Betting markets opened. Odds of human survival, 0. In the dead system where the fleets faced each other, the countdown began. 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Hayes stared at the void. At the wall of alien ships glowing with arrogance and power, engage. Nemesis locks, he said quietly. The officer's fingers danced on the console. Deep within the Leviathan, something stirred. A black cube pulsed once with crimson light. Locks engaged. Admiral. The countdown ticked away. 10 seconds. Hayes spoke without turning. "Remember this moment?" he said softly to his crew. "This is the day the galaxy learns what silence means." 5. Across the stars, the galaxy held its breath. 4. Alien cannons glowed with killing light. 3. The Leviathan's lights dimmed. 2. Korvath grinned, his claws curling in anticipation. 1. 0. The Dominion fleet fired. Space erupted in a storm of plasma and firepower enough to crack planets. 32 cruisers unleashed their wrath in one blinding wave. The void burned white, and when the light faded, human ships were gone. Not. Destroyed gone. Sensors screamed in confusion. The alien admiral froze. What? Where are they? And then behind his fleet, in perfect silence, the 20 human ships reappeared inside the Dominion formation, before anyone could react. The first cruiser split in half without a sound, then another, and another. The galaxy watched in horror. As the slaughter began, the Dominion fleet was a wall of firepower and arrogance. 32 cruisers, each a mountain of metal and death, had come to make a spectacle of Earth. They expected a massacre, a quick, bloody broadcast for the entire galaxy to enjoy. Instead, they faced silence. The humans were gone, not destroyed. Not vaporized, gone. Sensors screamed, alarms howled, but the screens showed nothing. 1 second, the human fleet had been there, in an empty space. On the Dominion flagship Pride of Zarkath, Admiral Korvath snarled, claws gouging deep scars into his throne. "Find them," he roared, his voice cracking through the command. "Deck like a thunderclap. Track their heat, their drive signatures. Anything." His officers scrambled over consoles, their talons clattering on metal keys. "Admiral," the sensor chief bellowed, terror in his eyes. "They're not wait behind. Us." The void came alive with light. 20 human ships reappeared in perfect formation inside the Dominion fleet's rear lines. Not drifting, not charging, waiting. For a heartbeat, the galaxy stared in disbelief. Then the slaughter began. The first. Dominion cruiser wracks eternal split apart like paper under invisible blades. No flash, no explosion. Just a sudden, silent fracture, spine cracking in two, as if crushed by a god's hand. Crew's screams echoed over open combs as the ship's core ruptured. Fire ripped through the void in a spiral of burning debris before anyone could react. A second cruiser imploded, its hull folding inward like crumpled foil, sucked into nothing. Then a third and a fourth, in less than 20 seconds for Dominion. Warships were gone. Across the galaxy, billions of watchers sat frozen, drinks forgotten, eyes wide with terror. Commentators who had laughed minutes ago were pale and silent. "What? What just happened?" one stammered on a live feed. That's not possible." Alien analysts scrambled for answers, their voices cracking. Slip space. Jumps can't be that fast. Can't phase inside another fleet, physics forbids it. That tech was banned during the Great War 1,000 years ago. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Admiral Elias Hayes watched the chaos unfold with an expression of cold calm. "Status," he said softly. "Targets 1 through 4, neutralized," reported the tactical officer. "Remaining 28 are scattering. Random evasive maneuvers, weapons cycling." Hayes turned his gaze toward the distant wreckage, glowing like dying suns. "They expected a battle," he murmured. "Give them extinction." The officer swallowed hard. "Sir, Nemesis protocol is still unstable. Hayes' voice was. A whisper of steel. So are we. Out in the void, the Dominion cruisers roared to life, spitting storms of plasma and antimatter. Fire streaked across space, bright enough to blind sensors. Dozens of warheads tore toward the humans at impossible speed. The Leviathan didn't move, at least. Not in a way anyone could see. The missiles vanished mid-flight, as though they'd flown into an invisible black ocean. Energy beams bent like rivers of light, curving away from human ships and dissipating into the dark. On Dominion screens, Fizz itself broke. Admiral Korvath slammed a fist on the console, his fangs bared in rage and fear. They're bending. The void, he roared. What is this witchcraft? Fire the graviton lances. Now. Across his fleet, weapons powered up gravity beams capable of tearing moons apart. But before they could fire, another 4 cruisers vanished. No impact. No. Warning, one moment there. Next gone, ripped into nothingness without a sound. The galaxy watched in frozen horror as Dominion's strength melted like wax under an invisible sun. Inside the Leviathan, deep beneath the bridge, a sealed chamber pulsed with crimson light. A black cube floated in the center of a containment field, spinning slowly. Its surface etched with symbols no alien could read. Because they weren't alien. They were human. It wasn't metal. It wasn't stone. It was something else. Something humanity had dug from the frozen core of Europa. 200 years ago, they called it the Oblivion Core. When the galaxy laughed at Earth for being weak, Earth studied the artifact in silence. For 2 centuries, scientists vanished into black projects. Laws of physics were rewritten. Technologies the galaxy had banned. The Zarkath Dominion was the galaxy's apex predator. For 5,000 years, no fleet had ever broken its power. They ruled through fear, their warship symbols of absolute dominance. But now, in the frozen void of an uncharted system, their power was burning away like paper and fire. Half the fleet was gone. 16 cruisers destroyed in less than 10 minutes. 32 had come to fight a show battle. They were the ones being slaughtered, and billions watched in stunned horror across the stars. On Zarkoth Prime, the Dominion's throne city, the high broadcast screen still showed the wreckage. Alien commentators whispered in disbelief, their voices thin and cracked. What? What are we seeing? One stammered. The human fleet, those old rusted ships, they're moving faster than slipspace theory allows. That's impossible. Another commentator shook his head violently, claws trembling. Not faster. They're phasing. They're rewriting the laws of motion. And then suddenly, the live feed cut out completely. A ripple of panic ran across the galaxy. Why did the signal drop? No one had an answer. No one wanted to think about why. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Admiral Elias Hayes stood silent, his hands clasped behind his back as reports scrolled across holoscreens. 4 more down, the tactical officer said. Quietly, they tried to scatter. Didn't help. Hayes nodded once. Status of the flagship. Confirmed kill. Nothing left but quantum dust. Hayes' expression didn't change. His gray eyes stayed fixed on the void outside, where glowing fragments of Dominion ships drifted like dead stars. Send the message, he said at last. The comms officer hesitated too. Who, sir? To everyone. A signal blasted through subspace, burning across every frequency, hacking every stream. Across billions of worlds, screens flickered back to life this time, showing not destruction, but a face. Admiral Hayes, standing against a backdrop of endless stars. His uniform black as midnight, his voice cold and steady as the void. This is Admiral Hayes of the Terran Defense Fleet, he said. Ah! Every syllable cutting like a blade. You sent 32 ships to destroy us. You mocked us. You laughed at our silence. He leaned forward slightly, eyes like iron. 16 are gone. The rest will follow. And then we're coming for you. The broadcast cut to black. The galaxy screamed. Panic rippled through every empire. Every government, every throne room. Ports flooded the Galactic Council. Dominion fleet collapsing. Unknown human technology detected classified as existential threat. All forces advised to avoid Terran sectors immediately. The council chamber, the delegates, were no longer laughing. They were shouting, shrieking, clawing at each other in blind fear. They broke physics, one ambassador wailed. That's Nemesis tech. That was destroyed millennia ago. A reptilian noble slammed a taloned fist. Lies. Tricks. There. Hiding something in those ships? No, whispered a Varelian, his feathers trembling. They've awakened something we buried. Something we swore never to build again. The chamber froze. That word had not been spoken for 1,000 years. Extinction weapons. In the Dominion High Command war room, chaos reigned. Dozens of admirals argued over each other, their crests flaring in panic. Deploy reinforcements, one bellowed. How? Many, another snarled. Everything. Every ship within 10 sectors. Crush them before they leave that system.
Oh.
Orders ripped through subspace. Across the void, reinforcements surged 40 more warships, the Dominion's second spearhead. They would arrive in minutes. When the message reached the Leviathan, crew waited for Hayes to react. He didn't blink. 40 more ships inbound, the officer whispered. Hayes' voice was calm. Good, saves us the trip. The void trembled. As the second Dominion fleet tore into real space like blades of fire, 40 ships bristling with weapons, shields blazing, they came in a wall of death. Ready to avenge their fallen, the human fleet didn't run, didn't move. It just vanished. Inside the Dominion spearhead, alarms screamed as human ships reappeared, this time inside their hulls. The first cruiser detonated in a bloom of silent black fire, its core eaten from within. Then another, and another. On the bridge of the Dominion command ship, the admiral stared in horror as the stars bent like liquid outside the viewport. Space was twisting, folding, breaking around the human fleet. What is that? He howled. The sensor officer's voice shook.
Not a drive signature.
Not a weapon. Admiral, it's reality. Tearing. And then the human flagship appeared. On their screens for the first and last time, the Leviathan, not a rusted hulk anymore. Its old armor was peeling away like dead skin, revealing black metal glowing with crimson veins, humming with impossible energy. Across its hull, glyphs burned like living fire symbols no Dominion scholar could read, because they weren't alien. They were human. On the Leviathan's bridge, Hayes spoke softly. Activate phase lances. The officer's hands trembled. That will do it. The void screamed without sound. Invisible blades tore through the Dominion fleet, slicing warships into dust. 40 ships disintegrated in less than 60 seconds. Their death cries echoed through open channel screams that burned into the galaxy's memory forever. And when it was over, only the Leviathan remained, drifting among clouds of glowing wreckage, like a god in the ruins of creation back in the Galactic Council chamber. Silence crushed the delegates. Billions watched the feed in absolute terror. For the first time in history, the Zarketh Dominion, the unchallenged master of war, had lost everything. Not in years, not in days. In 13 minutes, the galaxy understood one thing. Earth was not. Weak Earth was hunting. On the Leviathan, the officer turned to Hayes, voice barely a whisper. All hostile fleets eliminated, sir. Hayes nodded. Signal command. Prepare Phase 3. The officer hesitated. Phase 3. It was gray. Eyes glinted like steel. This wasn't war, he said softly. This was a warning. The stars burned red behind him, and somewhere deep in the black, something old and terrible stirred because Nemesis. Protocol was just the beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was a storm of chaos. Voices of 1,000 species collided in. A deafening roar. Screens blazed with emergency signals. Armored guards held back ambassadors who had abandoned diplomacy for raw panic. Order, bellowed the speaker, slamming his staff on the crystal dais. By the core, hold your tongues. The noise dimmed, but tension still burned like acid in the air. The chamber smelled of fear, sharp, metallic, choking. Report, speaker snapped. His voice trembled despite centuries of control. A thin Varelian envoy floated forward, feathers quivering. The Zarkoth fleet is gone. The chamber erupted again. Shrieks, growls, and hisses thundered through the halls. All of it, drivel. Warlord snarled, his jagged teeth glinting under the lights. The envoy swallowed. Yes. Every cruiser. Every reinforcement. Not a single survivor. Laughter was gone now. Only silence followed. The speaker leaned forward, voice hard. And the humans. The envoy hesitated, then quietly, untouched. The words rippled like a blade through the chamber. Ambassadors froze. Claws clenched. Mandibles clicked in nervous rhythms. The humans were not supposed to win. They were not supposed to exist at this level. A Creel ambassador slammed his spiked fist into the table, cracking the obsidian surface. Impossible. No species can destroy 72 Dominion cruisers in minutes. That would require extinction. Weapons. Soft voice cut in. The chamber turned. It was High Scholar Vase of the Eridania species, older than most empires, keepers of forbidden knowledge. His crystalline skin glowed faintly as he spoke. You feel it, he said, his voice. Like breaking glass. In your bones, you saw the feeds. You know the truth. The speaker's throat tightened. Say it. Face-faceted eyes gleamed like shards of ice. Humanity has reawakened Nemesis technology. Gasps tore through the chamber. No. Hissed a Vark emissary. That tech was erased after the Black Wars. Not erased, Voss whispered. Buried. Forgotten because it unmade the laws of reality. Now the humans wield it again. Screens flared with data feeds. Glitched footage of the battle replayed in fragment ships vanishing into nothing. Stars bending like molten glass, and the Leviathan glowing crimson with symbols no one dared decode. Phase space weapons. Muttered a Drevel general, his scaled jaw tight. Slipfold drives, reality, tear cannons. These are myths. They were myths Vase corrected. Until now. Speaker slammed his staff again. Enough. His crest flared crimson with stress. We need solutions, not ghost stories. If humans possess Nemesis tech, then we must destroy them. A Zarkoth survivor roared from the shadows. His crest was torn, his scales scorched, one eye blinded from the battle. All heads turned. The Dominion envoy limped forward, his claws dripping blood where they dug into his palms. They humiliated us, he hissed. They erased our fleets like dust. If we do nothing, they will erase us all. This is no longer war, it is containment. We must unite every fleet, every weapon, and burn Earth to ash. The chamber trembled with the force of his rage. Many ambassadors nodded in silent terror, but not all. No, said a calm voice. Every head turned. The Varelian ambassador's tall figure cloaked in silver feathers stood at the center. Her eyes sharp as a blade. You fools still do not understand, she said softly. This was not their full power. The chamber froze. What do you mean? The speaker rasped. She spread her wings slowly, as if bearing the weight of a terrible truth. The Nemesis fleet, she said, is only 20 ships. And Earth has thousands of shipyards hidden in the black. Gasps tore through. The galaxy was on fire. From the crimson deserts of Zarkoth Prime to the frozen moons of the Creel Dominion, every world trembled as the news spread. Earth had risen. For centuries, humans had been a joke. Water species clinging to an aging world, scraping through treaties for scraps of technology, laughed at by every power in the stars. But now they were death itself. On the Council's homeworld of Varelia Prime, fleets gathered in panic. Thousands of warships filled the skies. Like steel clouds, their engines boiling the upper atmosphere with raw fire. Soldiers marched through the capital in endless lines, weapons gleaming under the alien suns. Every empire answered the call. Zerkath, Creel, Varelian, Drevel, countless others. Thus, their banners burned bright over the great council's spire as delegates swore vengeance in trembling voices. This is not war, a Vark general snarled, his blade fingers clashing against his armor. This is extermination. We will scour their worlds until nothing remains but ash. Wrong, hissed a Varelian admiral, her feathers quivering. This is survival. If we fail, there will be no stars left to fight under. But even as they gathered, Earth was already moving. The Nemesis fleet did not wait, did not hesitate. It struck, in the black between stars. A convoy of Drevel warships surged through slipspace, their cargo bays heavy with weapons bound for the front. The captain barked orders, was confident behind layers of shields and escorts. Then the lights flickered, gravity rippled, and reality bent. The convoy tore apart without sound, shredded by invisible blades that folded space like paper. One by one, warships imploded into streams of burning fragments. Distress call. No survivors. Human hunters left no trace. In the Creole border sectors, fleets vanished mid-transmission. Entire battle groups, hundreds of ships blinked out like dying stars. Colonies reported shadows moving through the void, then silence. Outposts simply ceased to exist. The humans were not fighting battles. They were dismantling empires. And then the message came. Every screen, every channel, every neural implant across the galaxy went black, and Admiral Elias Hayes appeared. He stood against a void alive with crimson fire, the Leviathan looming behind him like a god of war. His voice was calm, but every syllable struck like a blade. This is Earth. The words echoed across billions of worlds. You came for blood. You laughed as you killed our people. You mocked our silence, thinking it meant weakness. His gray eyes burned like steel stars. You were wrong. He stepped closer, and for a moment it felt as if he were staring into every soul across the galaxy. Here are terms. He raised a single hand. Cease all aggression. Disband your war fleets. Dismantle your weapons of mass destruction. Your codes for verification. You will kneel, or you will burn. The silence stretched like a blade's edge. This is your only warning. The feed went dark. Panic consumed the stars. On Varelia Prime, delegates screamed at each other across the council chamber. Kneel, roared a Zarkov's warlord, his claws tearing grooves in the table. Never. We are the Dominion. We are a hollow officer burst in, voice cracking with terror. My lords, outer rim sectors are gone. The chamber froze. Gone? Whispered. The speaker, the officer's crest flattened in fear. It's not conquered, not occupied, erased, no planets, no moons, nothing but dust. Gasps ripped through the chamber like a storm. How? The officer swallowed hard. Human phase lances. They folded the systems into singularity fields. They unmade them. Silence crushed the room. Even the warlord stopped breathing. And then the impossible happened. The holoscreens flickered again, bit in, unstoppably, and once more haze. Face filled the chamber, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood the chains. They weren't human, not exactly. They were taller, broader, their flesh armored in living metal, their eyes burning with red light. Each carried weapons that pulsed like captured suns. For a moment, no one spoke. No one dared to breathe. Hayes' voice was soft. You wanted monsters. He stepped aside, revealing the chains in full. You just met them. His gaze hardened like a blade. These are not soldiers. They're the chains we kept locked away for a century. You think you understand war? You don't understand survival? The chains moved behind him in perfect silence. Giants built for annihilation. Nightmares sculpted in steel and blood. Hayes leaned forward. You have one cycle to comply. The screen went black. The chamber erupted in primal terror. Some ambassadors collapsed where they stood. Others clawed at each other in blind panic. By the core, they've gone mad. A Varelian shrieked. This is extinction. No, whispered High Scholar Vase, crystalline eyes dim with dread. This is judgment. Back aboard the Leviathan, Hayes turned from the darkened halifeed and faced the chains. Deploy to all fronts. Lee, the leader of the chains, a towering figure plated in black metal, bowed his head. As you command, Admiral. Hayes stared out at the stars, his jaw set like iron. They called us prey, he murmured. Let them choke on their mistake. And the Nemesis fleet surged into the void, dragging the apocalypse behind it. The chains moved like living shadows. Everywhere they went, empires died. Worlds burned without warning. Fleets shattered before they fired a single shot. Cities vanished. In clouds of white fire that left no bodies, no ruins, only silence. The chains were not soldiers. They were executioners. And the galaxy finally understood. Earth had been preparing for this for centuries, but the Galactic Council was not ready to surrender. In the heart of Varelia Prime, under the glittering spires of the Council Dome, a secret meeting took place. The delegates sat in darkness, their crests low, their voices hushed like criminals plotting treason. "The ultimatum expires in one cycle," whispered the speaker, his scales dull with fear. "We cannot disband our fleets. We cannot kneel. We are the core. We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 generations. And now you will die like dust," hissed the Varelian envoy, her silver feathers trembling. "The humans erased 12 sectors last night. 12. Do you understand what that means? They are not conquering, they are purging the stars. Then we strike first," snarled a Zarkoth warlord, his claws clicking against the table. "Cut!" Off the head, and the beast dies. "Kill this Admiral Hayes." The room fell silent. "You propose assassination?" the speaker whispered. The warlord bared his fangs in a grin. "Not propose. Demand. We have one chance. Us. A strike team of Phantom's Hour. Best killers. They infiltrate the human flagship, sever its command, and end this madness before it consumes us all." "Do it," another voice hissed. "No more words. No more waiting." Hours later, the Phantom Strike team slipped from the shadows of the Council's hidden docks. There were legends, hunters of kings, ghosts of war, each one cloaked in Phasvel armor, armed with weapons that could pierce starship hulls. Their target, the Leviathan, the human flagship, in the black void. The Leviathan drifted like a sleeping god. Round it, Nemesis warships prowled in silence, their black holes glowing with crimson veins, reality bending in their wake. The Phantoms rode in on a stealth skiff, masked by phase distortion, sliding through gaps between dimensions like whispers. No human sensors twitched. No alarms sounded. Inside the skiff, the Phantom leader spoke in clicks and hisses. "Strike fast. No hesitation. Kill the Admiral. Collapse command. End the purge." They vanished into the dark. The first Phantom breached the Leviathan's hull without a sound, phasing through matter like smoke. The others followed, slipping through corridors like shadows. The ship was a cathedral of deathfast. Silent, lit by veins of crimson energy pulsing through black walls, and then they heard it. A sound that froze even their predator blood. Footsteps slow. Heavy, too heavy for any normal being. The Phantoms turned on, saw them. The chains. The first one stepped from the shadows like a nightmare carved from steel. 10 feet tall, plated in black metal, eyes burning like red suns. Its breath hissed, like steam from a forge. In its hands, it carried a blade the size of a speeder, humming with energy that warped the air. The Phantoms moved as one, firing phase rifles in a storm of white-hot beams. The shots struck and vanished. The chains didn't even flinch. The first Phantom lunged, blades flashing. The chain caught him mid-leap with one hand, crushed his body like glass, and hurled him against the wall with a sound like thunder. The others broke formation and ran. It didn't matter. The chains hunted them down in silence. One by one, their screams cut short by weapons that sang like burning stars. Only one Phantom reached the command deck. Bleeding, armor shattered, breathing ragged. He burst through the door and froze. Admiral Hayes stood at the center, calm as stone, hands clasped behind his back. The Phantom raised his blade, his voice a hiss of rage, and then his body locked. In place, every nerve in his body burned as gravity folded around him, crushing him to his knees. His weapon shattered like brittle glass. His breath turned to fire in his throat. Hayes stepped closer, his gray eyes cold as a dead sun. "You thought we didn't see you coming," he said softly. "You thought you were hunters." His voice dropped to a whisper that froze the Phantom's soul. "We wrote the book on predators." With a flick of Hayes's fingers, The phantom imploded into a storm of red mist. Hayes turned to his officers. His face never changed. "Bring me the wreckage," he said. "I want the council to know how this ends." When the council saw feed the broken armor, the shattered weapons, they knew the truth. They had failed. And then the new message came. Admiral Hayes appeared again, his voice as co. The galaxy had never seen this much fire. Varelia Prime burned. Spires, the same towers that once held the Galactic Council, now lay in molten ruin. The sky glowed crimson as starships fell like meteors, breaking into fragments that rained fire across the oceans. The Nemesis fleet was everywhere. Phase lances tore through capital ships like they were made of glass. The chains walked across battlefields like gods of steel, cutting through armies in silence. Cities screamed, then went quiet. The purge was no longer a rumor. It was truth. But in the deepest vault of the council spire, far beneath the burning city, something stirred. The council had a last weapon, one they swore would never be used again. The room was a tomb of black crystal, filled with machines older than any empire, humming with forbidden energy. At its center stood a sphere the size of a small moon, glowing faintly with symbols that twisted like living shadows. The speaker stood before it, his scales pale with fear. Around him, the last surviving delegates watched in silence, their eyes hollow. "This is madness," whispered the Varelian envoy, her silver feathers trembling. "The Corps swore to bury this forever. It cannot. We have no choice," the speaker hissed, his crest flaring with rage and despair. "If the humans are Nemesis reborn, then we unleash what even they cannot fight." He turned to the control dais, his claws shaking. "Wake the black sun." Alarms howled as ancient locks shattered. The sphere pulsed brighter, shadows stretching like claws across the walls. Energy boiled in the air, crushing lungs and warping light. The delegates backed away, their hearts hammering in terror. "No," the Varelian envoy whispered. "You don't understand what this is. The black sun does not win wars, it ends stars." "That," the speaker snarled, "is the point." With a final strike of his claws, the activation runes burned crimson. The black sun awakened. Far above, in orbit, the Nemesis fleet paused. On the Leviathan's bridge, alarms flared. The stars outside flickered, bending like molten glass. "Admiral," cried the tactical officer. "Energy Spike Council, vault off the charts. It's rewriting physics." Hayes stared at the display, his jaw clenched like iron. "They woke it," he said softly. The officer's voice shook. "Sir, what is it?" Hayes turned slowly, his gray eyes cold as the void. "The only weapon the council ever feared more than us." In the black between stars, the sphere rose. The black sun was alive. It unfolded like a flower of darkness. Petals of shadow stretching across space, blotting out light. Reality tore where it passed, stars shivering in its wake, and then it began to feed. The nearest sun collapsed in silence, folding into the sphere like a drop of blood into water. Its planets followed, shattering into dust before vanishing into nothing. The black sun grew. Panic rippled across the Nemesis fleet. Even the chains hesitated. "Their crimson eyes flaring with unease, sir," cried the comms officer. "Outer sensor systems are vanishing, entire stars. It's devouring sectors." Hayes stood still, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the darkness spread across the holomap like ink. "So," he said quietly, "they chose oblivion." The officer turned, fear burning in his eyes. "What do we do?" Hayes' gaze was steel. "What we always do," he said. "Adapt and break them." The chains gathered in the command hall, towering over the human officers like black statues of death. Hayes faced them, his voice low and steady. "They think the black sun makes them gods," he said. "They think fear will stop us. They've forgotten one truth." He stepped closer, his eyes burning like cold fire. "No matter how big the shadow grows, the forge burns hotter." He raised his hand. "Deploy the forge protocol." The chains bowed in silence. Moments later, across the Nemesis fleet, new shapes unfolded from the dark. Not ships, not weapons. Engines of annihilation. Each one pulsed with crimson veins, glowing brighter than stars, their cores screaming with phase energy so violent it bent time. They weren't built for travel. They weren't built for war. They were built to break reality itself. The Forge. Protocol had begun, in the depths of Varelia Prime. The Council exulted as the black sun spread, consuming star after star. It works. The speaker cried, his voice shrill with triumph. The humans cannot fight this. Nothing can fight this. Then the alarms screamed. The vault shook like a dying beast. Walls cracked. Shadows writhed as if in agony. What is happening? The Varelian envoy shrieked. The speaker turned on froze. The black sun was breaking apart. Not because of failure, because something was pulling it apart. Above the burning world, the Nemesis fleet unleashed the Forge. Phase lances didn't just slice ships, they sliced laws. The very fabric of the Black Sun's existence began to unravel. Its petals of darkness writhed, tearing loose in fragments that bled crimson light into the void. The Forge engines howled, pulling those fragments into cages of collapsing gravity, crushing them into singularities before they could escape. The Black Sun screamed, not in sound, but in the twisting of reality itself, and then it shattered. A shockwave tore across the void, ripping the stars bare. Varelia Prime cracked like glass, its oceans boiling in seconds, its spires turning to ash. The Council died without a sound, on the Leviathan. Silence hung like a blade after the alarms faded. Status, Hayes said. The officer's voice was hollow. Black Sun neutralized. Council world, gone. Hayes stared at the dark where Varelia had been. For a long time he said nothing. Then his voice came, soft as death. Prepare the next phase. Turn to the chains, his gray eyes cold as a dead sun. No more ultimatums. No more warnings. The galaxy is done. And in the black beyond the stars, the Nemesis fleet spread like fire, burning what remained. The purge was no longer vengeance. It was extinction. The galaxy was ash. The great empires. The Zarkath Dominion. The Varelian Ascendancy. The drivel combined names that once shook the stars, now whispered as dust in the void. The Nemesis fleet moved like a plague of shadows, cleansing system after system until nothing remained but silence and dead suns. But not everyone was dead. Not yet far beyond the ruins of Varelia Prime, in the frozen dark of the outer fringe. The last survivors gathered. They were the remnants of 1,000 species, huddled on shattered stations and crippled warships, clinging to hope like drowning. Creatures clutching driftwood. They had no armies now, no fleets. No council, only fear and one desperate plan. In the hollow core of the refugee ark sanctuary, the leaders met in secret. There was no table this time, just a circle of broken beings under flickering lights. The air was thin, heavy with despair. The Dravel speaker rasped first, his voice like shattered glass. We run. We scatter to the dark. Hide in the void where no sensor can see us. The humans cannot kill what they cannot find. And when they do find us, the Varelian envoy whispered, her feathers gray with dust. What then? You saw what they did to the Black Sun? The room fell silent. Every mind replayed that. Horror. A weapon older than empires, devouring stars. Torn apart like paper by human hands. No, hissed a Creel general, his spines trembling. We fight. One last strike. If we fall, we take their worlds with us. The Dryval speaker laughed, a sound like breaking bones. And what will you strike them with? Rusted guns, dead fleets? They have phase lances that unmake reality. Silence. Again, finally, the Varelian envoy whispered the words no one wanted to hear. Then perhaps, we beg. Heads turned, eyes burned. Pride twisted like a knife. Beg. The Creel spat. He would kneel before monsters. The envoy's voice broke like glass. It's better to kneel than to burn. But even as they spoke, even as their voices cracked with fear, the truth settled like ash. It was already too late. The darkness moved. Not the natural dark of space, but a deeper shadow. Alive and breathing, sliding through the void like smoke, the Nemesis fleet had come. The first ark vanished without a sound. One moment it drifted through the dark. The next, it was enfolded into a singularity like a pebble into a black ocean. The second ark tried to run, firing every engine until its hulls melted. It didn't matter. The chains tore through it in silence, slicing its heart out with phase blades before it could even scream. The third ark sent a message, a plea, a prayer. "We surrender," it whispered. "We submit. We kneel." The message reached the Leviathan. Admiral Hayes listened in silence, and then he gave the order, "Erase." On the command deck, officers moved like machines, their faces pale under crimson light. The galaxy map flickered with dying stars, each one a grave without a name. Hayes stood at the center, still as stone, his hands clasped behind his back. The chains loomed behind him, silent and waiting. "Status," Hayes said. "Outer fringe collapsing," reported the tactical officer. "Only the arcs remain, both fleeing into the dead expanse." Hayes' jaw tightened. His voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. "Pursue." The officer hesitated. "Sir, why? They can't fight. They can't run. Do not let them." Hayes turned slowly. His gray eyes burned like cold stars. "There can be no survivors," he said softly. "You think this is revenge? It's not." The officer swallowed hard. "Then, what is it?" Hayes looked past him, out into the black, and for the first time since the war began, his voice held something like weariness. "It's prevention." And then the truth came. The last ark ran into the dead expanse, a place where sons had died. Before life began, a graveyard of black stars and broken gravity. It drifted there like a wounded beast, its engines bleeding fire. Inside, the survivors waited. Some prayed, some screamed. Some just stared into the dark, empty eyes, reflecting. The end of everything. And